I'll start. Hey, we're talking about how to be a team in your relationship. And I'll start, even though, I'll start from this perspective. We were having a chat a couple weeks ago, and it made me realize that going from basically being like perpetually single to in a relationship, you can't be the same person that you well, I didn't know this. But you can't be the same person that you were when you're perpetually single because um, well, that's not conducive to a relationship, right? And so what's really interesting to me is that I had to change. You helped me change a lot of those things. And in the past, a lot of those things would have been patterns that, well, they were patterns that I just continued doing. And anytime anyone would suggest, especially my partner, anytime it was suggested like I should change something, I'd be like, this bitch is trying to change me. Like, I gotta end this now. She doesn't get it, right? Um, but obviously, I've been uh, obviously using TechnoTutor, doing the DIP process, all of that, in order to change myself to be what I want to be best, right? And and so now in this relationship, we started this relationship based on agreements that we both agreed to, based on principles that we both agreed to, and who we would be in the relationship. So that already started us off on a good foot. That's something that I'd never done before, right? And then the other thing was part of our agreements is supporting each other to be best and calling each other out when we're not. Mm-hmm. And so anytime you would call me out, it's like, oh, okay, I'm open to that.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, now I need to change that. I'm not going to allow that to continue. I'm not going to get in my feelings and be like, oh, she said I was doing this. She's trying to change me. And so that's been uh, pretty cool, at least from this perspective. Part of what we've done that I've seen that's been really beneficial and that I've been sharing with other people is anytime that we have a disagreement, one of the first things that we do is we put it into our TechnoTutor, and it really shifts the dynamic from being one that is potentially combative,
reactive,
emotional. Yeah.
And not to say that like, oh, we're like perfect in this process.
No, definitely not.
That has its, definitely like when you're in the heat of a moment, it's like there's lots of resistance. Like, especially as a female, you just want to stay in the emotion sometimes, but it's cool being in this agreement or this relationship agreement because we can at least both recognize that, okay, if we are reacting and we need to like use our TechnoTutor, and to then talk about something, it's just been so much more supportive, even from like my past relationships, how different this is to actually like work through a point and pretty much like diffuse all of the emotion so then you can actually communicate clearly and also use TechnoTutor to process what's going on clearly.
Right, right.
And that's, I think, the biggest point is that I'll be like, well, no, I want to talk about whatever is going on right now. And Drake will be like, no, 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 let's do this list first. And then talk about it. Right. And in that, it's almost like, you're taking a step back and taking a breath before going into it. But yeah, like that's just, I know for myself, like that's been a huge difference in terms of like being a team, being like you and me versus me against you. It's like us against the problem versus like me against you.
I think that's like a common problem that, like, at least on televised relationships and things like that, is like they seem to be going at each other. It's like I'm gonna win or I'm gonna win, whatever the case is. But it's never a team. It's never a unit. That's not what we see in media, right?
Interesting.
And we,
Or like just some person like trying to be right, or like it's like a big energy game,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like trying to.
we cut that out pretty quickly,
Oh yeah.
and then we go straight to, okay, use techno tutor, and then we're back on the same page. We're back on like, okay, what is it that it needs to be corrected, and then we just do it.
Yeah.
And that's been amazing, because then the other component is then getting really clear on our goals together.
Right.
Getting clear on, okay, here's where our year plan is, and then a few years down the road where we plan to be. Um, and the more clear that we are on that, then we can together look at our goals together, come up with solutions. As opposed to, I think like a lot of people in their households, at least from what I see within my peers and everything, is one person's doing one thing, the other person's doing something completely different,
Right.
and then they just meet at the same house at the end of the night.
So true.
Right.
It's like everyone has separate lives. Like in within their relationship is just crazy, right? So this is definitely the first time that I've even just seen within the groups that we're in, having two people align in purpose as well in terms of like your life goals and what you actually want out of life versus, oh, I have my thing, you have your thing, and we just like kind of cohabitate as roommates basically,
Yeah.
and maybe I don't know, occasionally have sex or something, and
Right.
like that's just like not the most like purpose driven relationship, and why I think a lot of relationships then get stagnant and people just find like lack of fulfillment in their relationships. But I know that like regardless if I was like in this relationship or not, I know that what I wanted to be doing with my life is building the things that we're building right now in terms of like techno tutor and actually doing what's best, and then really helping to change, help families and communities like in within my life. But it's so cool doing that with Drake because it's like, okay, now we can tag team this together, and we're also supported by a huge group of people, that are also doing the same thing, which is so fucking cool.
Yeah, I think just to add a little bit of clarity, like what we're doing together, or the decision that we've made about what we want to create, is creating a world that's best for all, creating our own communities to be well educated, and not just educated in the sense like a lot of people think of education as like going to school or whatever that is, right? That's not education at all. We're talking about the way that parents interact with their children, the way that men and women interact together, the way that we as a society take care of each other and think about things. It's not just this myopic, or like you were making this point, I think yesterday, about how on the macro scale and the micro scale, the way that we deal with problems is, oh, you have this issue, take this pill, right? And then where does that lead you? It's like, okay, now that pill caused some other symptom, some side effect, where now you have to correct that. And it's like this compounding effect of never actually solving the root of the problem.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Like you're just band-aiding all the issues and not actually getting to the root cause of the problem.
And that's the same thing that people do in their relationships too. Right. Is like, oh, you're mad about this, let me go buy you some flowers. Let me just like not do that specific thing anymore. But you're never actually confronting it, never actually talking about it, never actually like getting to the root of, okay, how did this occur, and then what needs to happen to change that. Okay. Which is really at the root of what we're doing, not just in our relationship, but for our own persons, our own individual selves as well, with this process with DIP and Techno Tutor, where we're actually breaking down, okay, why did I react to that? Why am I acting this way? Where did this stem from? What do I have to do to change that? And then how will I prepare for that in the future when this feeling or this situation comes up again?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like being supportive in terms of like your role in the relationship as well, and recognize like just even investigating like, okay, why you're having certain reactions, like especially when it comes to like romantic relationships. I find like there's a certain idea that we have in our brains of what that is, and that comes from like your past experiences with relationships, as well as your upbringing in terms of what you saw in relationships, right? So it's really cool doing all this, like kind of having this process and being within this agreement that pretty much everything that you probably thought about relationships is completely false or wrong or delusional.
Yeah.
And
Like if you think of relationships as like this story
fairy tale
fairy
thing.
tale from like Disney or something like that, that's you're wrong. Like
Yeah.
they just fed you a bunch of bullshit.
Right. So it's just like cool because even though like in terms of like where we came from in terms of our past, it's like it's very different. But like we both had very like bad habits that we needed to stop, which Drake said at the beginning, like, oh, there was things that he was doing as a single guy that isn't conducive to this relationship. Well, the same thing with myself. Like there was things that I would do in past relationships, or even when I was single, that I needed to let go of as well to be in this relationship.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where like really working together and being on the same page as your partner, because that just causes like way less conflict.
Yeah.
And it's if you are gonna be with somebody, it's like why would you want to be you against them? Like you're in this like that's the ultimate partnership is being with another person.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say less conflict, more challenging. Right.
Right.
Because like we're not in conflict with each other, but we are challenging each other, and that challenge helps us both grow. Like
Absolutely.
That's something I actually really appreciate is now looking back on all those different challenges that we've had. It's like, oh, okay, but then that supported me to change in this way, and then now we're not doing those things anymore, and now we can see more and like, oh, okay, and we're actually moving pretty fast.
100%. Yeah, and even for myself, like, I think I can speak for a lot of females how we just can get so reactive and emotional towards our partners because they're not living up to our expectations or didn't do something the right way. And it's just cool, like, to realize, like, when you're going into those reactions, having someone to actually call you out on it and be like, that is unacceptable because that is not supportive for us. That is not supportive for you or me to even, like, solve this issue. What's actually going on? And let's actually, like, kind of prevent this from happening again. Yeah. Right. And even if it does happen again, it's like at least you're becoming like I know for myself, it's like I'm becoming more and more and more aware of when that happens. And usually now we can like either talk about it a lot quicker or like we said we do techno tutor and write a list about it. And even if it's something that maybe like Drake doesn't understand from a guy's perspective what's happening, it's like, well, I need to explain it in a way that he will understand so that he then knows what exactly what I'm talking about, which is really just then the art of communication.
Yeah.
Right? Because males and females, maybe you might not like this, but think very differently.
Yeah, for sure.
So
no, that's really clear. That's
really
clear.
You need to, then that's where you both then can work on your communication because they're not, as a male, they're not going to see what a female sees, and the same thing, like a female may not see the way that a man sees a certain situation or problem or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, work together.
Yeah, I'm seeing if I can tag you in this. Yeah, I can. All right, cool.
We have 329 mutual friends. That's crazy.
Somebody will see it. Yeah, I think that'll pretty much sum it up for right now, right? Unless there was something you wanted to add.
Yeah. I mean, we can go into this more maybe in another video, just about like actual like male female roles in a relationship to be a team, but I think we covered some pretty good stuff.
What do you mean by the roles?
Like as a female, like how I can approach you in terms of like supporting you to like build your business, and then for you as the guy, like what your role is in terms of like supporting and stability.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go into it.
Okay, so for myself, like I know for a lot of females, like ultimately, it's like what we're looking for is like what is it, structure and stability or support, right? And really, that comes down to like being able to trust your partner to be able to provide, because ultimately, like for us, like we want to have a family, right? And I know that I want to be a stay-at-home mom and take care and raise my kids, but
and I want that too.
Right, but then I can't be the one who's also like making the money per se
in
the most effective way, right? So it's like recognizing, okay, like where, because I definitely had that like female independent woman type programming where it's like I needed to figure out and do everything myself, and now coming into this and specifically like self-reflected and techno tutor, realizing that I didn't need to be the one to do it all if I could just find a man who would actually just support me to get the things that I want and be able to actually then be the most effective and best mother.
Yeah.
Right. So also kind of like coming even more into my femininity and being able to realize like, okay, I do have someone that I can trust, so it's gonna look very different how maybe I support him in terms of like my contribution to specifically the business that we're creating, and really just kind of focusing on certain other things that are managing our household versus actually actively going out and like getting the money, which is more like your role.
Right, right.
Right. So that's been a huge like thing that I've especially come to realize in the last like 3 weeks, like especially hanging out with like Katie Cope, right, the past week and
Yeah.
talking to her a lot about just like the feminine role and still being very much a part of what we're doing, but it's just looks a lot different than what like society is really like kind of pushing on people right now, especially in terms of like what a family structure looks like. So
I would also say, um, for anybody who's looking for that kind of relationship and seeing outside, like, hey, that's not really what most people are doing today in our society, I would say join Self Perfected. Like, we have a Facebook group where the people in there, they want to build what we're building, a community that actually is creating a world that's best for all, right? Um, Actually, just that's what we're trying to do. Just that is what we're doing. We're creating a world that's best for all, and we're doing that by through education, not by force, right? And so the people within that group are also wanting to create that as well. And so you're going to find people who will be supportive for you, with you on this I don't want to say journey, on this process of creating this world. And so if you're having a hard time finding that right now, join this group. Just you'll find other people in there, whether they'll be friends or maybe a romantic partner, or business partner, you know. But the people within this group are going to be people that you're going to want to communicate with, and you're going to see that they're going to be supportive for you on this venture, right? I think as well as well, I mean, just being a part of the group supports you because you can see other people doing it.
right.
You like, yes, you should reach out to other people, but just seeing the other people there, seeing so many different people, you know, not just young people, older people, white, black, whatever, right?
Like all walks of life,
Right.
but united in terms of like a common purpose, basically, and within principle, especially. And that's definitely something that caught my attention about this group was just like people really dedicated to almost like I would want to say like traditional ways of being that aren't socially acceptable necessarily right now, but in the most best and effective way that makes sense.
Not doing it because it's tradition, but doing it because it makes sense. Doing it because
Yeah.
like you can see the value in, okay, you know, obviously as a man I can uh, do more physical labor, you know, lifting heavier things, that kind of thing. Um, and as a woman, you're going to be more supportive for our children. Like, I can't breastfeed. I don't know if you knew that. Oh no, you knew that. I told you that this morning.
Right.
That's right. Okay. We're gonna leave it at that because I gotta hop on a call in like a minute here.
Okay. But yeah, definitely join the group because you'll see like what we're talking about specifically, and also it's not to say that like definitely not to say like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. No, no, no. It's about doing what's best for you, but then also ultimately what's best for all, and you're included in that, right? So as a female, that's not to like even say that, oh, you can't like go to school and get education. Like, no, it's not about that. It's just like actually them what's doing what's best. So okay, that's it.
Hey, bye.